want to share with you an insight that I think will perhaps enhance not only your understanding of the Parsha, but perhaps something that will give you opportunity to reflect about every day. We know that the Torah tells us in this week's Parsha, Parshas Lech Lecha, that Avram Avinu, after fighting the Milchama, was offered a tremendous deal by Melech Sdom. Vayomer Avram el Melech Sdom, Harimoisi Yodi el Hashem kel Elyon koinei shemayim va'aretz, imichot va'atzruch na'al, v'im ekach mikol asher lach. He was offered a tremendous deal. Avram Avinu says, I'm not interested. If I would take anything from you, michot va'atzruch na'al, from a little thread up until even a shoelace. V'im ekach mikol asher lach v'lo yisoymer ani ha'asharti es Avram. Lest people say that I got my wealth from you. People are going to say that I got my wealth, my success, purely straight from the Rebbeinu Shalom. Imichot va'atzruch na'al. And we know that Chazal tell us that in the zechus of this statement, in michot, we got the chut of tzitzis. Chut of tcheles, depends on the different girsa. We got something to do with the mitzvah of tzitzis. Ve'ad tzruch na'al, I won't take from a chut until a shoelace. Tzruch na'al, we got the ritzua shel tefillin. We got a ritzua shel tefillin that we wrap the straps around our arms every single day. So normally we don't think too much about this. Tzruch na'al, a shoelace, what's similar to a shoelace in the Taryag Mitzvah? Ritzua shel tefillin makes a lot of sense. But in fact, it has to be that there's a deeper connection over here. What's the connection between tzruch na'al and ritzua shel tefillin? And not only that not only do we assume that it has a deeper connection, it has to have a deeper connection because it's something that we are supposed to think about, perhaps remember every single day. What do I mean? Rabbi Kiva Eger has a fascinating insight on Shulchan Aruch. It's not his own. He's quoting from a sefer of drashas. Very rarely on Shulchan Aruch does Rabbi Kiva Eger quote a sefer of drashas. So you know when he does, it's going to be something which he holds will totally transform the mitzvah. So when it comes to the mitzvah of tefillin, we know that the halacha is that you put your tefillin on the left arm and you tie your tefillin with your right arm. When it comes to tying, we tie on our left. Therefore, the Gemara tells us, the Shulchan Aruch paskins rather, that when it comes to tying our shoes, we are going to put our right shoe on, but when it comes to first, then our left shoe, but when it comes to tying our shoes, what's going to come first? We're going to tie our left shoe first. We're going to tie our left shoe first because we tie our tefillin on our left hand. Says Rabbi Kiva Eger, what is the fact that I tie my left shoe? Why should I model that after tefillin? What does the tefillin have to do with my tying of the shoes? Comes Rabbi Kiva Eger and says, well, we know that we tie the tefillin because michot va'ad tzruch na'al, a shoelace, is the way that we earned our way to the mitzvah of tefillin. So therefore, it is befitting that when we tie our shoelaces, and we do so in a way that we remember the tefillin, because after all, it's through the shoelaces that Avram Avinu acquired the mitzvah of tefillin. So when I tie my shoes and I have to do something with my shoelaces, I want to remember that through these shoelaces, that's how I got the mitzvah of tefillin. So how do we make the connection? I'm going to tie my left shoelace first, just like I tie onto my left arm, to again bring and highlight this connection between tefillin and michut va'ad tzruch na'al. So again, it's not something just randomly that we choose. The zechus of michut at tzruch na'al, we got the mitzvah of tefillin. It's something which we highlight every single day. When we tie our left shoe first, we are once again strengthening that connection between the tzruch na'al and the tefillin. And of course, we have to ask, what is this connection between the tzruch na'al, the shoelace, and the tefillin? What does it have to do with ritzua shel tefillin that we in fact got bizchus, the tzruch na'al statement of Avram Avinu that he wouldn't even take a shoelace? Bizchus that the Rebbeinu Shalom says, I'm going to give your children a mitzvah of ritzuos shel tefillin. So we have to understand, what is the ritzua shel tefillin? A person could erroneously assume, and it wouldn't be such a bad assumption, that the mitzvah is the mitzvah of tefillin. The ritzua shel tefillin is not essential. It's essential practically, because how else am I keeping the tefillin on my head, and how else am I keeping my tefillin on my arm? So there's nothing inherently chashuv or inherently significant about the ritzua per se. It's much more that I need the tefillin on my arm, I need the tefillin on my head, and the only way to make sure that I'm going to keep the tefillin on my arm and head, how am I going to do it? I have to tie it to my arm with ritzuos. It's not that ritzuos are essentially inherently important, but really secondary to keep the tefillin on my head. One could have assumed such a thing, but this medrash tells us that not like that. This medrash says that bizchus ruch na'al, we didn't get the mitzvah of tefillin, bizchus ruch na'al, we got the mitzvah of the ritzua shel tefillin. And we have in fact halacha l'Moshe misinais that deal particularly with the ritzua shel tefillin as opposed to the tefillin themselves. In fact, according to many Rishonim, the halacha l'Moshe misinai that has to be black was originally referring to the mitzvah of the ritzua shel tefillin. So what significance does the ritzua shel tefillin have as opposed to the tefillin itself? And I would argue that perhaps the ritzua shel tefillin that Chazal focus is more significant when it comes to the tefillin shel yad in particular. We've mentioned many times that the mitzvah of tefillin shel yad and tefillin shel rosh are two distinct mitzvahs according to many Rishonim. They're even counted as distinct mitzvahs. But not only are they counted as distinct mitzvahs, the nature of the mitzvah seems to differ. On the one hand, when it comes to tefillin shel rosh, the mitzvah is not the maisa of tying them onto my head, rather vehayu litoita fois beinenecha, that they should be on my head. Whereas when it comes to the mitzvah of tefillin shel yad, the mitzvah is not just that they are on my hand, rather ukshartem, the maisa kshira is essential. Can make an afkamida l'maisa. Let's say someone else puts on the tefillin for you. So it could be that you're yotze the mitzvah of tefillin shel rosh because v'hayu l'toita voice beninecha. After all, they're there. It's not the maisa mitzvah that's essential. It's really the toitzah that they're on my head. But when it comes to the tefillin shel yad, no, you have to tie them on your yad. Ukshartem la'ois al yodecha. The kshira is important. So perhaps when it comes to tefillin shel rosh, we could assume that the ritzuas are there merely to keep the tefillin in place. But when it comes to tefillin shel yad, the ritzuas are a very essential part of the mitzvah. The mitzvah is not merely that the tefillin, the bias, is on my arm, and the only way to do that is through ritzuas. No, the mitzvah is to tie it on my arm. I have to do a kshira. If I get mitzvahs on my head, if I get tefillin on my hand somehow without the maisa kshira, so I'm not yotze the mitzvah. So it's not only that the tefillin are on my hand, but that I tie them to my hand. So the significance of the ritzua is really highlighted where? In the tefillin shel yad, where the mitzvah is not only to have the bias, to have the tefillin on my arm, but ukshartem. And why is that the case? Because the yesod of mitzvahs tefillin shel yad in particular is the yesod in which we bind, if you will, or limit or restrict our own koyach. The yesod of mitzvahs tefillin shel rosh is kishem Hashem nikra lecha. Everyone's going to see v'ro chol ha'amim. See that the Rebbeinu Shalom is rest his shechina in Klal Yisrael. The yesod of mitzvahs tefillin shel yad is not v'ro chol ha'aretz. We keep it covered. The yesod of mitzvahs tefillin shel yad is that I am restricting my own koyach. I am limiting my koyach. I am binding my koyach. I'm tying it up as if to tell the Rebbeinu Shalom, I understand that I am not the one really in control, but you are the one that is really in control. That is the yesod of the mitzvah of tefillin. I understand, Rabbi Shalom, the mitzvah of tefillin shel yad. Everything comes from you, and my koyach is nothing. My koyach is limited. That's why the mitzvah tefillin is dafka on the left arm, because we show that really both of our arms are the weak arm. Yadka. Where does it say yadka? It said yadcha in most psukim. And that mentioned tefillin says yadcha without a hey. But we learned the left arm from, because one time it says yadcha with a hey. Yad keha. Where does it say it? The one time it says that is the parsha v'haya kiviyacha. Why? Because when you go into Eretz Yisrael, that's where there's a concern of koichi v'oitzim yadi. And that's where we need specifically the mitzvah tefillin shel yad to say, no, it's not us. It's yad keha. Our hands are the weak hands. It's really the Rebbeinu Shalom. That is the entire yesod, the essence of the mitzvah of tefillin shel yad. Yad keha, to remind us that it's not our power. It's not koichi va'oitzim yadi. But we are limited. We are restricted. Really, our hands are merely emissaries, shluchim, of the Ribono Shel Olam. We have no koach without the Ribono Shel Olam. That is the yesod of the mitzvah of Tefillin Shel Yad. The Sefer Chinuch goes a step further, that it even binds our koach so that we don't run after a taivas. But listen to Ksav Sofer, the way the Ksav Sofer writes it, Yad keha lilamid sheyadel shel adam keya v'chalusha. The yesod of mitzvahs Tefillin Shel Yad is to remind ourselves that the Ribono Shel Olam is running the show. Our hands are weak. We tie our hands as if to tie one hand behind our back, saying we are limited. It's not us. It is the Ribono Shel Olam. That is the mitzvah of Tefillin Shel Yad, but not just having the bias there. The act of kshira is significant. So when we get the Ritzua Shel Tefillin, the aspect of Tefillin that the Chazal are highlighting is that we are tying our arm down. We are telling the Ribono Shel Olam, we understand that we are very limited. It is our weak arm. It is Yad Keha. You are the one that are really pulling the strings. What is the yesod of a shoelace? In our tradition, now we make a bracha every single day, according to most Rishonim, on the fact that the Ribono Shel Olam gives us shoes. What is that bracha that we make? According to most Rishonim, the bracha is Sha'asa li tol tzarki. You take a look at the Rishonim. It's very important to know. What am I making a bracha? What is the bracha of Sha'asa li kol tzarki? So the Rishonim explain Sha'asa li kol tzarki is a bracha thanking the Ribono Shel Olam for giving me everything I need, even down to the last necessity that is our shoes, say the Rishonim. Sha'asa li kol tzarki refers specifically to the matana of the Ribono Shel Olam for providing us with everything we need, even our shoes. Va'achshav kishu lavish min olav. That's why the Gemara says, after all, when are you going to make this bracha of Sha'asa li kol tzarki? Says the Gemara, when you put on your shoes, because the bracha of Sha'asa li kol tzarki is telling the Ribono Shel Olam, you have gotten everything taken care of. You have done everything for me. Everything I need, I have up until the bottom last thing that I need, even my shoes. Afilu lavish v'chager v'lavish mechlesayim v'achshav kishu lavish min olav lavish kol tzarko. Everything is taken care of, and therefore we make a bracha of Sha'asa li kol tzarki. So the bracha of Sha'asa li kol tzarki is a bracha that the Ribono Shel Olam takes care of every single one of our needs. Every last need that we have is taken care of, and that is represented by the fact that everything is provided for me, even down to the shoe. This is why we've mentioned in the past that Rabbi Schwab points out that the bracha of Sha'asa li kol tzarki is the only bracha that is Belashon Yachid. Everything is Pakeach Ivrim, Malbish Arumim. You dress everyone could see. Zoyke Kavufim. All of a sudden, it comes to the shoes. Sha'asa li kol tzarchi. Why is it about me? Because says Rav Schwab, when you are looking at yourself, that's when you have a mentality that the Ribono Shel Olam took care of everything. When I look at other people, I can't say, the Ribono Shel Olam will take care of them. He actually ties it into this week's parsha as well. Fascinating idea from Rav Schwab. He says, if you take a look at this week's parsha, Avram Avinu, says the Ramban was a chote for bringing Sarah down, for hiding Sarah, and for going down at all. Avram Avinu was considered to be a chote, an avarian. Says the Ramban, V'da ki Avram Avinu chata chet gadol bishkogo shehevi ishto atzadeket b'michsho avim de pachto. Why did he bring his wife down to Mitzrayim? V'hayeloi livtoyech b'shem sheyatzel sov es ishto es kol asherloi ki yesh belokim koyech lazer lahatzil. He should have had more bitachon in the Ribono Shel Olam. So says the Rav Schwab, I don't understand. If it was a shkoga, so then it wasn't a chet, it was a mistake. I don't understand. V'kasha, I chet gadol chata, like the Ramban says, eich karu haramban shkaga. What's going on over here? What was the chet? Avram Avinu understood that he could have bitachon. But he said, I don't have bitachon for someone else. When you're looking at yourself, you say, the Ribono Shel Olam took care of me. But when it's talking about everyone that's coming with me, all the people I'm responsible, my wife, v'chol asher li, so then I can say, bitachon, the Ribono Shel Olam will take care of him. That's this yesod. That's what Avram Avinu said. I have bitachon for myself, but I don't have bitachon for everyone else. I have to take care of them. Sha'asa li kol tzarchi. It's the only bracha that's talking about me, because that's the bracha, as we mentioned, that thanks to Ribono Shel Olam for taking care of every single last thing. Everything I need, Rebbeinu Shalom, you gave to me. That's a perspective to have on your own life. You don't have that perspective on someone else's life. You don't say, Rebbeinu Shalom took care of you, and Ani comes to the door, Rebbeinu Shalom gives you everything you need, slam the door in his face. No, when we have the perspective of Rebbeinu Shalom gives me everything, then it's the B'lashon Yachid. Because Asa li kol tzarchi. So if the bracha of Sha'asa li kol tzarchi is the bracha where we thank the Rebbeinu Shalom for giving us everything, and we recognize that everything we need, the Rebbeinu Shalom gives it to us. And Chazal are koveya that when do we make such a bracha? When we tie our shoes, that's when we realize the Rebbeinu Shalom has taken care of every single need that I have, all the way down to my shoelaces. That's when I could say, Sha'asa li kol tzarchi, the Rebbeinu Shalom provides me with everything, and anything I don't have, I don't need. So how befitting it is that from the fact that Avram Avinu says, Michut va'ad tzruchnal. What was Avram Avinu saying? Michut va'ad tzruchnal. I don't need anything from you. Everything I need, the Rebbeinu Shalom will provide for me. Michut va'ad tzruchnal. I don't even need a shoelace, because the shoelace is the last final need that the Rebbeinu Shalom provides. So says the Rebbeinu Shalom, Bizchus Avram Avinu saying, I need nothing from the Rebbeinu Shalom. The Rebbeinu Shalom provides me with everything. Sha'asa li kol tzarki. Everything I need, even my shoelaces, the Rebbeinu Shalom is providing for me. So we get the mitzvah of Ritzuos shel Tefillin, which I tie to my arm to remind his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren la'olam v'ed of this philosophy of Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu, you realize, michut v'atzuchnal sha'asa li kol tzarchi, bizchus that I'm going to give a mitzvah to your children that will help them realize that they too are limited, that it's not them accomplishing, the Rebbeinu Shalom gives them whatever they need, and that is the ritzua of tefillin. The chut v'atzuchnal. Mida keneged mida. Avram Avinu gets for his children the mitzvah of ritzua shel tefillin, not the mitzvah of tefillin. The ritzua shel tefillin. The ritzua shel tefillin is what binds our arms. It reminds us everything we have is from the Rebbeinu Shalom. Michut va'ad tzruchnal. B'zchus Avram Avinu recognizing this, we have a mitzvah which continuously reminds us of the same yesod. As we tie our tefillin, we don't just think about the tefillin, but we think everything we have, everything we need. Michut va'ad tzruchnal. She'asa li kol tzarchi, and therefore I'm binding my arm, showing the Rebbeinu Shalom, I realize how limited I am. My hands are both considered left. They're just going to be able to accomplish whatever you provide for me.